Here's a short video on customizing templates for your QuickBooks file in preparation for invoicing out of QuickBooks. So here I've just brought up an invoice. I just want to point out here we've got template and you've got a whole list of things to choose from. These are default ones that come with QuickBooks. So we're going to work on customizing our own to use. But it's important to note, well, first of all, that you can get rid of a lot of these, but that you can have multiple templates for each type of transactional document. So if you need to add a different footer on one or a disclaimer or some type of standard information, maybe you want to show the item code for some customers but not for others, that's just customize your template and then you just name it something different so you can select from. So if I go into the manage template, I'm just going to bring up, I had made a copy of one earlier. I'm going to open that up. And here, starting at the top, I can add a logo. When I do that, I want to save the logo to the same drive where the data file is stored, where the QuickBooks company file is located. That's very important. You can change around your colors and your fonts. People, get really into the fonts and colors. Down here is the company name and address and all of that if you'd like to have it, and if you need to update it. It does pull in from the company, My Company, when you set up your file. So if you need to edit what you're displaying, you can do that in here. And then if you do have an invoice and you want the status of it to display, like if it's paid, for example, you can have this on and then it'll have like that little paid stamp, kind of diagonal on it. So you've got that. So that's the basics there, sort of this top area. Then we can go into additional customization and then the layout designer. The layout designer is moving the boxes around themselves. This is getting into the content of it. So if we go to additional customization, we're going to work in the header area and all of these cool boxes before moving on to the columns, which is super important. So very important to note that you've got screen and print, which can be totally different. You might want your people in the office to see more information than you want your customer to see. So this is where you can customize, and you can also change the title. So this is really good for estimates, for example. Every business calls it something different. Estimate, proposal, quote, whatever you want, you can change it here, and that'll change how it's displayed. And then you can also change all of these headings as well, but maybe you don't even need to show it. Maybe you don't need to show the PO number or the rep number if we're not using sales rep. So just, clicking and turning it on or not is going to take it off of the box. And then you're going to get a lot of pop-ups that you can just kind of ignore and work through, taking that off altogether. Also, if you've got custom fields that you have set up, that comes more into play for columns, but you'll have a CF for custom field. You might want to repurpose an existing box, and then you can rename it here. So you've got all that. And then columns, or just like it sounds, the columns going across. This is class, class you may be using internally. Odds are really good your customer doesn't need to see that. The same thing with inventory site. This is probably the one that I play around with the most. And then, renaming. I do a lot of renaming. So that's where you can play with that. This is if you're doing progress billing. You can do it in here or on a sales order. If you want to show, this is important as well. If a sales order has been filled or maybe partially, or some things are back ordered. Some people don't like the term back ordered. You can use a different term, but that's what that's about. The footer is pretty self-explanatory. Here you've got your subtotal, payments, applied, balance due. That's down to this box over here that you can play around with. And then this is what I mentioned with the long text, the disclaimer. I have that where there's different product liability or different warranties involved. And that was my example of having multiple templates, depending on if you've got some disclaimers to add in there. So that's why you can do that. And the benefit of that is, it's going to stick with the invoice. It's not like, a customer message that you have a drop down to keep changing. This is going to be standard. And then on the print, you've got a couple options here that you can work with as well. Once I've got that all figured out how I want, and you may go back and forth a few times on your print preview to see how it looks, but then I can go to the layout designer and drag things around. This is what's displaying, so that's helpful, but this will help you drag your columns. There's a lot that you could play around with it, and you can definitely replicate what you may have from another system. So once you've got your template all set, we're going to exit out of here. So we've got that set. Then we're going to go up to the customer area And we're getting ready to invoice now. So we want to link in our new payment account. That'll allow you to have a payment link at the bottom of your invoice. Once you have that, it's going to have an option that you can accept payment, which is super cool. If you don't already have that enabled, let me know and I can get you set up with that. So we're going to link that based on the email that you receive that has the tips in it and your merchant ID and your credentials for that. So you follow those steps. Then we'll go over to edit preferences and make sure we're enabled to email our invoices out of here. So I'm going to go to preferences, send forms, and under my preferences, this is a great box. This can be a huge time savings. Make sure this is checked. This is saying every time you create an invoice, and I'll go back and show you, there's a box at the top for email later or print later. This is going to auto check it, and you'll see in a minute why that's so beneficial. So definitely get that set up. You can follow the prompts down here to link in, an Outlook, a Gmail account so that the messages will send through there. And then if we go to company preferences, this is great as well because you can have standard templates with the messages. So there's, a current default that's in here. You can actually edit that or you can add a new one. So we go in here and you can play around with what you want the message to say. And again, you can have multiple ones on here, like a nice message for your first invoice, thanks for ordering. Then maybe the second one, when you're resending the invoice, you can mention that. You can also do this for statements. You've got all kinds of transaction types that you can send out of here. Very important field is I always BCC myself on this one, just so I know that it went out, just 100% certainty. Plus, if I need to resend, sometimes it's easier just to forward the email copy that I already received. So once I've got that set up and I'm happy with my templates and my multiple templates, let me just show you, we'll go back to the invoice for a second. At the top of the invoice here, we would have email later. That would have been auto-checked. And then I can go ahead and I can create all my invoices. Then I can go to file and send forms. If I did have emails ready to go, if I had a bunch of invoices, I spent the past hour getting those ready to go, they're all going to be stacked up here. And I can just do one click and just send them all out at once, which is fantastic. And if I've got multiple invoices going out, they can be combined, which is great as well. And then that also logs in here under the customer area in the customer center. If I go over to the tab, it will list that it was sent out, which is nice too, so that you're not yelling over to somebody else, oh, did you send that invoice? You know exactly when it was sent. So hope that helps get your invoicing process underway. Good luck.